they've also been quite forward-leaning without actually acknowledging they are forward-leaning about it.
The options are essentially stop providing services or do it for free.
The economy is a system that was designed. We can redesign it to get the outcomes we want to see.
Actually, this wasn't inevitable. You had a choice about what you gave your money to, and you chose to keep your promise to landlord.
It is quite devastating to see this current government absolutely trash what has been a really good track record with disability.
The complete lack of investment into Te Ao Māori.
What is the top priority for that $15 billion? The government says the top priority for that $15 billion is tax cut.
But it's not fair that a religious group like Destiny Church stands outside a school. If it was any other protest group, parents would not accept that.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Hello.
I'm playing with my this sounds terrible. I'm playing with my Advent calendar, which I dug out, and I just knocked it to pieces while I'm playing with it. But movie fans out there are going to absolutely love this. This is a die-hard Advent calendar, and every day you get closer and closer to Christmas, Hans Gruber gets closer and closer to going splat. But I was just waiting while our preamble video opened, and I broke it while I was doing that. So that's a great way to start the show.
Oh, yeah. No,
Brilliant way to start the show.
Right off the bat, before we bring our first guest in, I am going to pre-warn people that if my camera goes off, do not worry. I'm actually doing bits and pieces on the fly because it's been one of those weeks.
Multitasking.
So if you just hear my sound for a few minutes at a time, don't concern, I'm okay. But with that, we have our first guest in the green room at the moment. Let's bring in Dr. Will Flavell.
So let me get to the part where I can actually do that. Play the videos. Supposed to play the videos. They've updated our thing on the side. All of our little bits and pieces that's supposed to go, yeah, do this, do that. Brand settings. There we go. This button right here.
Yeah.
Kia ora, Will.
Kia ora, Paul. Kia ora, Blake. Kia ora koutou katoa.
How are you holding up this week?
Holding up really well. It's been a really interesting, but interesting week politically. But yeah, it's been interesting.
Yeah. So now I've got you here in front of me on camera. Congratulations on the award for Local Government New Zealand Young Elected Official Award. You put a post up on social media this week that actually gave me a bit of like, aw moment. Where you mentioned that when you're off places, like you were in Whangarei earlier this week, and you're dealing with young people, you like to make sure you introduce yourself with your doctor title to show that it's possible for people to work hard and get those sort of accolades and what's actually out there for people to reach their full potential. I want to say it's amazing. I think that is an absolutely brilliant way to do things. So thank you for doing that and for inspiring the next generation of people out there.
Oh, kia ora, Paul. Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. I guess for me growing up, perhaps I didn't see people like me that had that, that had a PhD or had a doctorate. And so for me to really normalize that in the communities that I interact and I'm active in, I think that's really important. And that's an obligation that I have. When obtaining that degree, that's an obligation that I have for my community.
So have you been joining the Hikoi this week yet, Will?
Yeah, really, really interesting. I was up in Whangarei for work, and so I visit schools as part of my work. As I was leaving my hotel that I was staying in the north, it was where the Hikoi marchers all gathered at the car park when I was getting the car. So I interacted with many of them in Whangarei, and that was on the second day of the National Hikoi. So it's really great to catch up with friends. There were some school students there, school principals, some of our local MPs as well. So I had a bit of a corridor and chat with them, and so I think today they were in Rotorua. So it's been really cool to see the journey from the north and heading down to Parliament, and should reach Wellington on Tuesday or Wednesday next week.
Tuesday. Yep, Tuesday. Because I believe Lawiri Waititi said to David he was really specific about seeing him on Tuesday.
Oh yeah, I mean, yesterday actually watching the debate of the first reading was really very interesting. Some very strong viewpoints came across, and no doubt it was made famous by the haka that was instigated or initiated by Māori MP Hana Maipi Clark. So that was really cool to see, actually.
Yeah, I've seen so many comments about it. I got a message this morning from Manila going, "What's going on? Like, this is really cool." And I've seen a whole bunch of terrible old white people get all angry and upset about it. So it must be doing something right in my respect, as far as I'm concerned. What do you think of the contents of Mr. Seymour's bill?
You know what, Paul? I think that the whole treaty bill is a waste of money. It's a waste of resources, and it's a waste of time. And I think, after our COVID pandemic, this is not the kaupapa that we need to collectively address or look at as a nation. There are so many far more important areas of concern I think we need to really dive into and really strengthen and support. And so this was one of his pet projects. I think this aligns with the small minority that are connected with him and his particular political party, and it's a shame. But what I've seen, and I guess the beauty of this, is that actually a lot of people have come together to really protest against this, acknowledging that this is wrong. Te tiriti is a really important focus of our nation, and to actually come across to say, you know what, we're just going to change this. We're going to get it through the parliamentary system, without the views of Māori. And I think it's just a waste of time and waste of resources. And I'm really glad that people are collectively fighting against it.
So, how did you think Speaker Brownlee handled the the whole thing yesterday? Because I don't know if you've seen the news tonight, but we saw Sir David Carter say that he doesn't feel that Mr. Brownlee was hard enough on the Maori MPs and should have come down even harder than he did. And then you got the other side that saying that he did the right thing by not saying anything. So where do you sit on that debate sort of around that?
Yeah, first of all, I think that I've read a lot in the last 24 hours that perhaps he didn't do his job properly as the Speaker of the House. But actually, what I saw is that this bill is really an injustice. The Te tiriti, historically has just created so many grievances and continues to be ignored by many. And so I guess there's a lot of passion, there's a lot of perhaps hurt with this bill coming through, and I guess the mamae or the hurt that many of those MPs felt. So perhaps Jerry Brownlee may have had a heart in some instances of yesterday's first reading. He knew it was going to be emotional from the start. You probably would have heard or seen the many that gathered in the from the top. So I don't know if you've been into Parliament before, and at the top there are people that are seated and are watching. Generally, you are to be quiet in that instance, but we heard haka, we heard waiata, we heard cheering, and I think mostly we're supportive of. Not very supportive of the Te tiriti bill. So I think he handled it okay, I suppose. Particularly as it was a very emotional and historic first reading of such a bill.
Yeah. Mm.
What are your thoughts on what we're likely to see out of the select committee process?
Yeah, I mean, this has created the perfect mandate for David to continue to get his views across. I mean, this select committee is going to be taking, a very lengthy amount of time, months. That's unheard of for any particular bill. That select committee is going to drag on, and I think obviously David Seymour wants to see this. This will give the opportunity for ignorant people just to perhaps express their anti-tiriti views And this is exactly what he anticipated. I mean, it was a shame that Christopher Luxon, who has repeatedly said that there's nothing, no benefits from this particular bill. He doesn't like anything about this bill, and he had the opportunity to kill it from the start. Because this tarnishes his reputation as a first-time prime minister, and this is the reputation that will carry with him and be part of his legacy, which is a great shame. So what I'm doing, Paul, is I'm going to be trying to get as many people to submit as possible. A lot of people have never submitted to any select committee before, so I want to be able to use my skills to really support others to write their own submission, to really propel their thoughts against this bill.
So I should probably give you a little bit of a heads up then. We've got a pre-recorded interview I did with Shanan Halbert this afternoon a little bit later. And one of the things that we actually brought up was what to put in a submission if people want to submit on this bill. And the really important things to take note of in terms of length, in terms of authenticity, how to get your message across. So people might want to stick around for that as well. I think it'd be a really handy resource along with the mahi that you're doing in that field.
That's great. That's great. For me, what I would really encourage people to do, I think it's to write from the heart. What does this bill mean to you? I think it's really important to think about the consequences of this bill from a personal level. And it's really great to see both Māori and Tauiwi, so non-Māori, also play a really pivotal role. We've seen a number. I know you talked about sort of perhaps older white Pākehā people, Paul, but actually a lot have also been supportive. And I think we need to really be encouraged by that. That for me, what Te Tiriti is all about. Te Tiriti is a document of beauty that really brings people together, and that's what I would highlight in my submission coming up.
So what were the key points that you would encourage people to submit if they want to submit them?
Yeah, so first of all, I think it's really important to put your own individual spin on it. Do your research on Te Tiriti as well. Look at the historic context, look at the current context as well. So for me, Te Tiriti is all about, I know people are sort of swaying away from the general principles, but I think that's still really important to me. Partnership, participation, and protection. So protection of our reo, of our tikanga, of our traditional ways of doing things. Participation. So Māori should be able to fully participate at all levels of, say, governance in this country, leadership opportunities in this country, and to have their say, on a number of issues. What really saddened me actually was a number of initiatives by the national government this year. I guess I look at the Māori Health Authority, and recently it was the what was it? The pharmaceutical big organization. There was
Paula Bennett's taken out the
Māori advisory group on Farm.
Yeah.
So for me, what that signals is that actually there's a very anti-Te Tiriti focus when you're not allowing Māori to have their viewpoints on issues that are important to us as New Zealanders. Bearing in mind, I think of there was a national government that really initiated co-governance issues. I look at the Waikato Tainui treaty settlement, which actually the National Party initiated, which allowed Tainui tino rangatiratanga or authority over, I guess, their awa, the Waikato River. So it's really embarrassing or shameful part of our history. Now we're sort of doing a 360 on that.
What do you hope to do as part of this bill? Do you want to go to Parliament and be a part of the journey, or what would you like to do as a local official from your neck of the woods?
Kia ora, Blake. I am often asked that question, quite regularly about, I guess my future in Parliament. So I'm finishing my fourth term of this current local government term. So a year from now is the next elections. So I'm going to spend the summer looking at whether or not I want to restand again. I mean, for me, I think Parliament offers the opportunity to really flesh out policy ideas that I'm particularly passionate about. So I'm particularly passionate about education issues, the well-being of our children and our rangatahi. And also, I have a bit of international experience as well, so I really want to look into that. So perhaps I may do so by looking at the right opportunity, but never say never. So we'll see what happens.
What has been the feedback from your community about these things that we've been seeing happen over the last week? Because I mean, there was the abuse and state care apology that started off the week, and then you've got the Hikoi, you've got the treaty bill. The community that you're in is incredibly diverse. You've got tangata whenua, you've got people who have come in from a huge range of other countries that have chosen to make the country home. You've got Pākehā there. What sort of feedback have you been getting from your local communities about everything that's going on?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, Paul. I think about, for example, the citizenship ceremonies that we do in West Auckland. They're up to 300, 400, 500 people, and there's so much love and respect that our migrant communities have for the Māori worldview, and that's really pleasing to see. No doubt, Paul, you perhaps would have seen that we hosted a citizenship ceremony on our marae, the ability to really positively, and beautifully influence, Te Reo Māori in a positive manner and positive way to our migrant communities. We have a very strong Māori community here in West Auckland. We're home to Ruane Waititi Marae, which is a very strong marae with a strong background in kapa haka in this community. Very diverse Asian and Pacific communities as well. And so it's really important. It's really appealing to hear that, some of the initiatives that this government's put across, our community is not liking. It's really good to see that our community are proactively supporting tangata whenua when it comes to toi te tiriti and that kaupapa. And I think generally we're a very progressive community, and I think that it's really important to continue to listen to the views of our community when it comes to those real issues. No doubt our community are also facing, everyday cost of living. That's probably the most paramount issue. But when it comes to affecting, Māori rights, or just the ability to be able to be yourself, that we can positively and proactively be ourselves through our language, culture, and identity, and anything that takes that away, then our community are going to say, hey, that's enough.
So how long will it take you to make the decision what you're going to do next? Are you going to, as you say, you're going to take the summer, so are you hoping to announce your plan by sort of February, March sort of time?
Yeah, well, actually, Blake, for myself, and I've just posted this, there were hundreds of amazing young leaders that went through Toi Te Tiriti Hikoi. So what I wanted to was really inspire many of them to actually put up their hand and actually, you know what, we've got city council elections right across the motu, right across the country. Put your hand up, campaign hard, and because when you're at the decision-making table, which I have been for 11 years, there's so much beauty in the ability to make decisions that directly impact and affect our communities. And that's the beauty of being at a local government level, that every decision that you make has a paramount apparently affects directly our communities. And that's what I want to do, is continue to inspire rangatahi and young people to be able to do that. So I'm going to have those conversations over the summer and early on next year, identify key people that are willing to stand. I know there's a risk with elections, but actually if you put in the effort, if you put in the mahi, I think everybody has a chance. And what we're going to do is you're going to change the makeup of traditionally our city council elected members. We're not very diverse, and Paul, you definitely know historically we're not diverse. So this is the ability to change that, because when you have different types of people at the decision-making table, you're going to get different ways of thinking and modes of thinking, and there's so much beauty in that, and I really want to encourage that.
Should
Well
people be
said.
thinking now about running if they're looking at running?
Absolutely. We've got less than a year than elections. You need to be resourced, so have the funding to be able to do that. So fundraisers, get the resources to be able to do that, and actually know your community as well. So for me, the best places when I'm campaigning is out on the sports grounds. You've always got parents and whānau hanging out at rugby league, at the netball, at the different sports places. That's always been a way of connecting with whānau. So you've got to be you've got to understand your community. You've got to get out there. You've got to be seen. In Māori, we've got the saying, he kanohi kitia, a face that is seen, which is such an important part of the Māori world view of leadership. You have to, in order to be a leader, you've got to be a face that is seen. That's important to us. So, I think you need to be active right now.
As an elected official, I know from my experience, which is far too vast for its own good, a number of people who get elected to these positions don't have an understanding of Te Tiriti. How much has that changed in the last sort of decade that you've seen, and how important do you feel it is for somebody going into one of those roles to have an understanding of how our founding document works?
Yeah, I think about, for example, being elected to council is the strong relationships that we have with iwi. And what that does is that we recognize iwi as the indigenous guardians of the land that we stand on, and how their traditional practices for over hundreds of years, how that's really important to decisions we make when it comes to, I guess, the decisions we make around the lands. I think about... For me, I think about the streets that we've named, utilizing the stories of local iwi. I think about the playgrounds, the sport grounds that we've created with the support of iwi. They've been able to help us rename those parks to give us a bit of a story around that. It's really cool that, with New Zealand history now being a core component of our curriculum, that we're finally understanding some of the beautiful local stories in our communities. And that, for me, is Te Tiriti. It's about all New Zealanders having access to our historical tribal stories, and that Māori do have an important role to play in that decision making, and the guidance about how we make decisions. And the promotion of our reo, that's for me is an integral part of that. And basically, just to finalize that, a Māori worldview is very different from the Western worldview, and I think it's beautiful, and it's a great thing when those two are combined well when making decisions at a council level. So I think we're becoming so much better in the Te Tiriti space.
It's brilliant to hear.
Yeah. I can see why you won that award, Will. You did a very good job. Any final comments from you, Paul? I'm all done with mine.
I only have one more question for you, and it's probably more in an official capacity. Will I be seeing you in a park sometime, probably first quarter of next year? Go catch up, watch a movie?
Absolutely. Oh man, I love those movies. And Paul, I've seen you at my friend Oscar Kitely's movie that we had in Henderson. Also, because I'm a big Harry Potter fan.
Yes.
I felt like I grew up with Harry because I think we're the same age. So it was cool to see you at the Harry Potter movies as well. So yeah, I think movies in the park is such a cool events across Tamaki and Makaurau. They encourage. For me, whānau to come together, a free event for our communities, which is something I love that. You get rid of barriers in order for our community to enjoy the connectedness of each other. And I think that's what council essentially is all about for me. It's about connectedness. And, people connecting to others, to services. And I think for me, that's why I love this job.
I think it's a brilliant place to end this. And I'll send you a list of the films when they send it to me next week.
Thank you, Paul. I love the New Zealand-based movies as well. So I'm a fan of any New Zealand-based movies. There was a film last year, earlier this year, maybe The Mountain. I haven't seen the amount. It was a New Zealand film. I think maybe a children's based film, and that's hopefully we get to see that movie sometime in the future. Yeah,
Fingers crossed. When I get sent the list, I'll let you know.
Awesome. Thank you both.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here tonight. It's really appreciated. Keep up the amazing mahi that you're doing. It's inspiring to see, and I hope a lot of people out there are listening and paying attention.
My pleasure. Ka kite. See you guys.
Ka kite. Bye-bye.
Ka kite.
So yeah, Dr. Will Flavell. Love talking to Will. Love it. We're going to jump straight into the next guest, who I didn't do a zippy thing for because it's just been a hell of a day with everything that's going on. If you want to follow Will on socials, I would thoroughly recommend it. There is so much positivity in what he does. It is really cool to see. And if you're somebody who is considering running for your local body authorities next year, he's a really good person to use as a role model for what to do, how to get out there and reach your community and staying connected with communities before you run for something like that. Anything you want to add before we bring in our next guest? Do you want to do like the musical stuff, since I forgot to do an intro for him?
Just if you can take a few comments, I've just got to go and check something. Sorry.
Yeah. That's all good. You do that. Well, I remind people that in our chat on Facebook, we're running a bit of a poll again tonight. Really simple one, not super controversial. We just want to know whether or not you've joined the Hikoi, or whether or not you're considering joining the Hikoi, or haven't yet, or you're not sure. So far, I've got 20 votes, and it seems to be pretty overwhelming that people have been involved or are planning on getting involved, which is really interesting to see. Really good to see. You good to go? Fantastic. Let us ask Nick Ruane, are you joining the Hikoi or have joined the Hikoi?
Well, I thought I'd wear my Hikoi t-shirt.
Perfect.
Just to preview that, yes, I will be joining the Hikoi on Tuesday in Whanganui-a-Tara, Wellington. So we're waiting for it to come to us, and it's going to be amazing. I kind of get the feeling that half of Wellington's going to be coming out on Tuesday, and so it's going to be a great day.
I've heard estimates of 40 to 50,000 people, which would make it our largest ever single protest.
I think we should probably push for higher numbers than that, but I think 40 to 50,000 is a good start.
On a Tuesday in the middle of the day, that's really impressive.
Yeah, I think so. I can't wait for it. It's going to be fantastic. So bring it on.
Brilliant.
So, the reason why I got you in here to pop in and see us is because last week we received the unfortunate news that Star Jam had come to an end, which impacts a lot of education side of the disabled community. So my first question today is, what was your initial reaction to that?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Blake. I would say sadness initially, but also not a lot of surprise, unfortunately. I know that there's a lot of charities in the disability sector that are under a lot of stress and a lot of financial pressure at the moment. So I think you might start to see a little bit of this going on, a little bit of organizations that are just holding on at the moment. And I think what we're seeing is the beginning, potentially, of a few organizations that have been holding on for a little while, slowly beginning to lose the grip, and just maybe Star Jam is the beginning of a bit of a wave of organizations losing that grip. So I think we might see some more, unfortunately, over the next year or two.
Do you think that that this current government or previous government, including previous Labour governments that you've been in the background of, should have in hindsight funded some of these programs a little bit, or even a bit better if they already have been?
Yeah, that's a pretty controversial question. It doesn't sound like it, but it is. I think what we've seen over, and it's not just this government question, this goes back probably more than 10 years, 20 years, even 30 years. A lot of organizations are facing significant funding pressure, and they're facing funding pressure for everything, for the basics, and that's why they're having to go out and do fundraising. So yeah, this has been coming for a little while. So when the funding is tight, that's when organisations have to go out and start either direct approaching the public or going out on street appeals. So and at the moment, because everything is getting tight, cost of living pressure is really starting to bite. People don't have as much money in their pockets to give away. That's when fundraising becomes a little bit more challenging. So that's potentially what we are seeing.
And do you feel like that this is another repercussion of the minister's earlier cuts, meaning Minister Upton's earlier cuts earlier this year?
I don't think it's directly related, but I think it's part of a broader lack of investment into disability services. But I don't think that those two things are directly related.
I'm curious, actually, how much we know about the very sudden announcement that came out in, I think it was March, and some of the sessions that we've recorded with Blake with organisations within the disability sector for his show, The Truth, which I'm working on and editing and we'll have up sometime over the weekend.
Yep.
There's a lot of commentary that we get from people about that event coming as a bit of a shock. How much of what we're seeing now from within the sector is from people scrambling to recover from that shock or from the ramifications of that really sudden announcement?
Yeah, I think the cuts that happened back in March were related quite specifically to disability supports. Whereas I think what you saw with Starjam is a little bit wider into the sector. That's more wider disability sector funding. And I don't think, that's why I said before that those two things are not specifically connected, but they are related in the sense of general underfunding over a long period of time. And that's why those organizations have had to go out to the public and employ fundraising to basically bring in money to pay for the running of those organizations. And at the moment, that's just that little bit tougher. And with things like the cost of living pressure at the moment, people just aren't able to give. So I think that's potentially what we're seeing. We may start to see a little bit more of organizations start to just find it almost impossible to carry on. So this may be the beginning of a wider set of organizations just say it's too hard.
How do we ensure that future governments help these organizations so that they can return or not go under them if they're not connected?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question, Blake. I think we really need to have a good look at how we actually fund our disability supports. Because at the moment, the way that our disability supports are funded is kind of like a bucket, if you like. And that bucket gets filled up every 3 years. And the reason why a lot of the funding is being squeezed at the moment is because there's so many people getting access to benefits because there's so much unemployment. And the emphasis of the funding is going towards things like work and income benefits, and it's diverting the funding away from disability funding going to organizations. So we need to have a bit of a think about how we fund our organizations and go back to first principles. We don't fund health like that at all. So I think it's time for a bit of a rethink.
And is that something you'll be looking at when talking to officials at upcoming conferences in the next, 18 months or so?
Yeah. I think it is time to start thinking about investing in disability services over the long term, and having commitments to increase funding relative to the population over a longer term, rather than having a lolly scramble every 3 years.
Yeah. What would be your ideal hope? Like a standard funding block that just doesn't change, or and someone that looks after the money and the government can't touch it, or how do you want it to work?
I think I look to how we fund health. We fund health based on population, cost pressure, health inflation, and it's a calculation. And I think we should be funding disability in a very similar way, so that is a formula, and it's calculated by Treasury, and that funding is just diverted off, and that's calculated every 3 years, and then that funding is just diverted off to. It used to be Whaikaha, but now that's gone back to MSD, and then that funding goes to DSS within MSD, and then that funding is set, so that we don't get into the issue around cost pressure, which ultimately degrades the value of the contracts, and therefore how much money gets out into the sector.
Great question, Sam. I don't know if GDP would be good or not.
Yeah, so what are your thoughts on this one, Nick? Would it be worth funding disabilities by a percentage of GDP?
I think that's a fantastic question. Thanks for the question. I'm not entirely certain. I think people with far smarter brains than I need to figure this out. I think the way that we fund health is by a percentage of GDP, and then we add on cost pressure and health inflation and those types of things. But I'm not certain if that's the right formula, but I know that the formula at the moment is not working, and we need to do something different. So if it's a percentage of GDP, or if it's a percentage of the population relative to GDP, then that's what we need to look at.
Yeah. Any other questions from you, Paul?
Only one. Have you signed Blake's petition yet?
I've signed at least one petition for Blake. I'm not sure if it's the latest one, but I've definitely signed a petition for Blake.
So that petition finishes when, Blake?
The end of this month.
Yes, okay. I've definitely signed that. Yep.
Cool. That's it. That's my one question. Big scary stuff. Have you signed it? I ask everyone.
Hey, we'll be going back to the Parliament steps if we're. Hopefully, I don't get the flu this time.
No one's allowed you tell me the date, and I'll be there, Blake.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for popping in. For a quick chat. It was good to see you, as always.
No problem at all. Thanks, Blake. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Nick. See, we're just zipping through this like super fast. It's fantastic. There's some amazing comments coming through on here as well. Where are the details for the petition? I don't have them directly in front of me, but Kiwi Skirt might be able to put them in the chat if she's still got them floating around.
Lots of ways you can do it. You can go to the main channel thing tree. You can go to my Facebook. You can go to Instagram. You can go lots of places. So if you search me or Paul, you can find it anywhere you like.
Yeah, and Kiwi Skirt has just posted it in the chat as well. So anybody that's in the YouTube chat should be able to link to that if they're watching it on a desktop. I don't know if you can access links on phones. I don't know. Not looked into it. Should we jump into the next one? Anything else you want to do before we jump into the next one?
Just to admit, I haven't seen this yet. So I forwarded this while I was literally out for the count.
Yes. Yeah, that's why we spend the first 10 minutes of the video just making fun of you the whole time. We're absolutely terrible people, and I apologize for it. So this is the interview that we pre-recorded with Shanan earlier today. Yeah, as you can imagine, it's been a really busy week for MPs. They had that apology right at the start. There's the Hikoi that a lot of them want to be involved in. And of course, yesterday was a really big day in Parliament. So I spoke to Shanan about all of those and what it's like being in Parliament during something like what happened yesterday, and the feedback coming in from the Hikoi. So hopefully people get a little bit of something out of it. And as I mentioned before, when we were talking to Dr. Will, there is a little bit there as well about how people can get involved in the submission process, because that's going to be really, really important when it comes to the new year. So let's jump in. Let's catch up with Shanan. Kia ora, Shanan. Thank you very much for being here. Much appreciated. I realize it's been an incredibly busy week for you guys. You had Hikoi mō te tiriti at the beginning of the week. You had the introduction of the Treaty Principles Bill into Parliament yesterday. I guess the first question is, kei te pē Hikoi, how are you holding up?
It's always good to come home, right? But it's mixed emotions, I guess. When I reflect on the past week, we started with the apology for children in state care. So that sort of started what was set to be quite a heavy week. And, you know, our aroha goes out to those survivors. And then to move through to see the Hikoi forming up, more and more people joining along the way, but the absolute support for that kaupapa. You know, that's significant for Aotearoa. I think it's significant and reflective of how people are feeling at the moment. And, you know, many of my own community in Northcote joined the Hikoi and went over the bridge, you know, to be thousands and thousands of people supporting the Hikoi mō te tiriti. And not only Māori, but, you know, Pākehās and, you know, every ethnic group, I think, was represented in there. So that's really special. And I guess when it landed in the House yesterday, there was a bit of anxiety. I think politicians, there's, you know, a little bit of political excitement. But the opportunity to demonstrate that resistance collectively between us as Labour, the Greens, Te Pāti Māori, it's the first kaupapa since we've been opposition that I think we've really formed that relationship, consensus. And yesterday we were able to demonstrate in the House the power of opposition, but the power of our parties when it comes to significant kaupapa like this.
That's actually one of the things I really like around how you guys have approached the communications with what's going on in opposition. It's a joint effort. Like there's press releases that have been put out, there's videos that have been put out together. How much of an undertaking is it to get the three parties, who obviously have different perspectives on things, to work together on something that's so really important to the country?
I think that we're still learning how to be effective opposition. You know, we're in this place of Parliament where you have to work independently as parties. But when such destructive, divisive and detrimental policy comes before us, you know, kaupapa overrides politics. And so that was the opportunity. It made it easy, I think, for our parties to come together to work on our common agenda there. And when it came to something that really, really matters for our country and people, you know, we did the mahi together and we got on with it. But it was also what people wanted to see. That they wanted, you know, the message has been really clear from King Tuheitia right from the start. We must unite. Kotahitanga is key. And so that applies to us as politicians, and that's what we did. And, you know, it was fantastic to end collectively with the hakatautoko yesterday.
So you took part in that. I know not a lot of people would have seen it because of the way that the camera angles are facing in Parliament.
It's been a long time since I did a haka.
Well, I was going to say, what was going through your head when that happened?
It was therapeutic for one. That one of the biggest challenges as a politician is sitting there and listening to effectively what Seymour was reading out in his speech, you feel the pain of those around you that this legislation hurts, the fear, the anxiety, and for me, the anti-Māori agenda since this government came into play has been incredibly destructive for our people and communities. So, a haka is an opportunity to let it out, and in a respectful way. It's a haka, but it's a respectful practice to add value to the speeches that were had there and to demonstrate our resistance to this.
Is the gallery built for so many people performing a haka all at once?
It's got good bones, that gallery, I think, but it certainly hasn't been seen like that before. It wasn't just for us, it was the people that were standing in there, that they had to sit silently throughout that whole process, which was about an hour. The speaker said right from the start that, if anyone is disruptive, the whole gallery will be removed. And that could have gone two ways yesterday, right? But, how gracious they all were standing in that gallery, and they're all raising their hands silently instead of doing applause. So the haka at the end was an opportunity for the people, the public, to join in and to show David Seymour that we absolutely do not support this bill. I mean, the bill doesn't have support from anyone in Parliament apart from the ACT Party, but as much pressure that we applied on both the Prime Minister and to National Party MPs, we really wanted them to demonstrate some leadership, to show some action and vote against the bill. We've said that it is unnecessary, it's expensive, it's going to be a painful 6 months, and it still means that we have to hear all of those submissions and then also come back and do a second reading. So it's not going to be nice for anyone. If they thought through the politics, there's only one kaupapa happening in the media at the moment, and that is the Treaty Principles Bill. And I'm sure that that's not what the government wants to be focused on at the moment, and it's taking oxygen away from any other work that they are doing. So that works for us, but we'd really rather not be here.
In terms of Seymour's speech that he gave in the House yesterday, he got interrupted a couple of times, which I'm not surprised by, but he made some really fascinating claims that, for me, don't sit right. Claims like having Māori voices in decision-making processes and setting up things to make sure that there's equitable outcomes for Māori in areas that we often see that there aren't equitable outcomes. He pitched those as special rights that Māori get that non-Māori don't. I'm wondering if you'd be able to speak that. Because I know I suffer from white privilege terribly. I'm very fortunate in that respect. Am I missing something here? Or is that pretty much his argument, because people get treated slightly differently, so they get better outcomes, they're getting special rights?
Well, that's certainly his argument, which has absolutely no evidence attached to it. It might be a feeling that some people feel, but this is his white privilege speaking out too. When it comes to equity in this country, it's Māori that have been disadvantaged since the signing of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. There's no questions about that, and that is reflected in health and education and the justice system. And so, I'm comfortable that in Aotearoa New Zealand, we all have a fair go. We all have opportunities, but we can't lose sight of the impact of colonisation on our country and the impact that it has had on Māori. We need to plan for a future Aotearoa that is about our children and their children's children, to ensure that it reflects a country that they see too, and it's up to our young people, and we hear them now. That they love the treaty, they love being a New Zealand that embraces Te Ao Māori. They're so proud of it, and internationally, it doesn't reflect well on our country when a country that has had some of the best race relations, albeit awkward and difficult at times, that suddenly we're in this position where we're doing harm to our Indigenous people. That's not the New Zealand that I think anyone wants at the moment, and it certainly doesn't help our international reputation.
When you're out on something like the Hikoi, when it passed through here, was that the same sort of feeling that you were getting from those people that were there?
The Wairua, you could see through social media, fantastic social media has been going on throughout the week, reflects it really well. It's passive resistance. That Wairua is positive, it's warm, it is about kotahitanga against a kaupapa that people do not like and are not happy with. But the main thing is that it's uniting New Zealanders, Māori and non-Māori alike, that they're coming together to fight against this legislation. So I'm just so proud of everyone and how they've demonstrated themselves, how they've shared the Toitu Te Tiriti message out there, and it couldn't have come off better. And I hope that passiveness continues through to Tuesday, because it's just so gracious, and that's how people have come together.
Speaking of Tuesday, that's the day that the Hikoi is due to show up at Parliament. Some estimates have put the crowd size at 40 to 50,000 people. It would be the single largest protest this country has ever seen. I don't even know if the grounds of Parliament could hold 50,000 people, to be honest. It's smaller than people realise. But I'm kind of curious as to what the process is for you guys as MPs. Do you go out, you meet people? How much planning is in advance for everything else that's happening around Parliament on the same day? How does it actually work from your perspective?
Yeah, so some of our MPs will be going to the Pōwhiri with Ngāti Toa on Monday night. I'll be joining the Hikoi from Waitangi Park on Tuesday morning and walking with our community to Parliament. Some will greet the Hikoi when it arrives at Parliament. For me personally, I'd rather do the last leg of the Hikoi with the people. It's an opportunity to be together and to really support those that have done the hard yards right from Te Rerenga Wairua all the way to Wellington. So, it's going to be a special occasion and one to watch.
Any of the government MPs going to be there?
The question was asked of Minister Pōtaka yesterday in the House. He didn't answer the question. That's not unusual for this government. We saw the Prime Minister duck and dive on questioning last week, and then he didn't even have the regard to stay in the House for the Treaty Principles first reading yesterday. That was disappointing and a real lack of leadership. So I have low expectations that any of them will front on Tuesday. It wouldn't surprise me if David Seymour himself took the opportunity to walk out on the Hikoi because of the narrative that would present. So he would be the one to watch, I think.
Speaking of the narrative from David, he is very good at spinning this with really simplistic arguments. It's about equal rights. Why shouldn't New Zealanders have a say in how the tribunal works? How much of the narrative from yesterday do you think he's lost control of? Because everything I've seen has been all about what happened with the haka, Willie being kicked out. It was all about the reaction from the opposition as opposed to David and his presentation of the bill. So it feels like he's kind of lost that narrative push that he's been able to do so far, with the possible exception of the Herald, because I saw Barry Soper came out today going, well, it was full of hatred and clearly David is the victim here. How much control does David sort of lose when this happens around the narrative of what he's putting forward?
That's part of our political strategy. As yesterday we took away the platform for him to spread his negative narrative, and it was all about us. I was disappointed in Barry's commentary. That's certainly not what I saw. A haka isn't just an angry demonstration. It was much more than that. I was really proud of all of my colleagues that they were quite restrained. A few of us got told off by the speaker, but as long as your interjections are rare and reasonable, then we went through it okay. But David is losing the narrative on this. The Hikoi has taken away the platform that he would have hoped would be there. But, there's nothing better than people power to send a message to this government that they're not happy with the Treaty Principles Bill. They don't want it. It's costing us when it doesn't need to. But I think the biggest loser here is actually Christopher Luxon himself.
The bill's going to go through the Justice Select Committee, which I kind of understand because it ties into the tribunal, which is part of the justice system. What sort of involvement are you expecting the public to have in that process?
I expect that there'll be tens of thousands, if not over 100,000 submissions. On one end, you'll have, the Hobson's Pledge gang whipping up their pro forma contributions, and then you will see quite a large number of submissions come from Te Ao Māori, but Te Ao Pākehā in New Zealand as well. So there will be a lot. I think the Select Committee will have to make a decision on if they hear every single one, every single person and group that wants to do an oral submission. That would take them a very long time. So I suspect that they'll have to randomly pick a certain amount that they can get through, hear those. They'll do their departmental report, and then it will go forward to a second reading. Where, it hasn't been talked openly that there will be a second reading, but that's part of the parliamentary process. So, it's a long haul that we'll be going through right through till Matariki next year. So at least Matariki is a good time to move on from.
Oh, yeah. Do you have any advice for people who are looking at submitting? One of the things I try and tell people is try and avoid form letters. If you get a million copies of the same thing over and over, you know that it's come from someplace that's pushing a certain narrative, but you're not getting people's perspective. What other advice would you give to people out there who want to make a submission on this?
Yeah, I always say keep your submissions simple. No more than one page, unless there's a whole need to add a bunch of research in there. Consider the like anything, you consider the audience. So when an MP is having to read a bunch of submissions, one page is a reasonable amount to get your points across. Also consider if it's just yourself as an individual, or if it's a group, or that you do both. That's an opportunity to put forward your perspectives. The total number of submissions that are for and against do count with the Select Committee, so scale was important, and that's particularly what the likes of Hobson's Pledge would largely be focused on. But yeah, like you, Paul, I would avoid templated submissions because they all just get counted as one.
I was talking to Taku Teferis about a month ago, and he said something that sort of stuck out with me when it comes to the Select Committee. When you get a majority of feedback in the Select Committee on one way or another on an issue, he feels it should be thrown out, essentially, if it's going against what the bill is that's being put forward, or what the Select Committee is looking into. There's also a feeling that some people have out there that it doesn't actually make a difference because this government is determined to do what it's doing and it's not listening to people. They've rushed things through under urgency. They've minimised Select Committee processes in the past. Should people lose sight of the fact that this is an important part of the process?
Putting submissions forward is very, very important, and that importance can't be underestimated. If, for example, that there was quite a difference in the number of submissions that were supportive versus against that bill, that would be quite concerning. So I do encourage people to put forward their submissions. But the value of, as an MP, I personally value people's contributions, their thoughts and ideas and their opinions on the work that government is doing. But in opposition, it's just as important that those submissions come through. They support us. They add value to the arguments that we are putting forward. And that the government or the Justice Select Committee actually can't disregard submissions. That people's thoughts are included in all of the reports. They'll be part of history. And, in 10, 20 years' time, we will reflect on this period, just like we did with the foreshore and seabed, and we will not be proud of what New Zealand is going through.
That was actually going to be my last question for you, was how is history going to remember this moment? It's obviously big news at the moment. Everything's going viral, but we're in the heat of it. What do we remember 10 years from now about it?
Yeah, this will go down in history as one of the most destructive pieces of legislation that our Parliament will ever see. I'm not sure if we will see this again. It's whipped up by politics. That's what it will be remembered for. And, it won't be successful, but it will be the day that we will look back on and ensure that we don't repeat. Our learnings were on the foreshore and seabed. That is something that we never, ever want to explore again. But it will also be remembered for the time where Māori and non-Māori come together to build race relations in this country.
So the Hikoi's there, what time is it on Tuesday that it arrives?
11 o'clock.
Okay, if people want to be involved, if they want to come down, just bowl on up, try and find a car park.
Maybe take a bike. Up-to-date information is on the Toitū Te Tiriti website. So they'll do regular updates. So go and look there for the information. They'll also give you good advice on parking, weather, what to bring. But yeah, go and support the kaupapa.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Shanan. It's much appreciated.
Tēnā koe.
Well, looks like it's just me at the moment. Paul's just about back. Mike's off.
Eating chocolate, reading the chat. There's some really interesting stuff in there. There's a conversation going on at the moment around a bill that was put in 2007 as part of New Zealand's first coalition agreement with Labour, comparing it to the current treaty principles bill. There's been lots of comments like this on today's YouTube video. And so if people would like to go along there after this and check it out, maybe respond, you're more than welcome to. I would thoroughly recommend it. I'll also point out that Shanan has agreed to present one of our awards on the 29th. He will be presenting the award for Most Outstanding Political Moment of the Year, which I suspect we might have a clear winner on already. But people can go into the comment section in the community tab here or on Facebook and Instagram and check out the nomination options there and leave their votes, and we'll do like a bit of a poll over the next week on them. So on the 29th, we can do a big presentation and Shanan will present one of those awards for us, which I think is very cool. And I think there was tons of stuff in that particular interview about the submission process and what it was like to be involved yesterday. That was really fascinating to listen to.
Hey, at least your weekend crashed during the interview when you weren't live.
That's very true. Everything worked fine. Very, very fine. So no complaints at all. And I got a chance to go and get my chocolate and top up my drink. Is that Paul's video? So all I've got left to play is the news, which is about 5 minutes long. Anything you want to add before I play the news?
Oh, we'll discuss what's coming up after the news, like always.
Okay. And it's only like 5 minutes because there's only been like a few things in the news this week. But yeah, we'll do that. We will watch the news. Hello there, kia ora, and welcome to this week's news. David Seymour, seen here being the kind of person who keeps getting out new glasses every time they want to drink, not drinking them, letting them pile up and then refusing to put them in the dishwasher, sat smugly in Parliament as his Treaty Principles Bill was read for the first time, sparking fierce debate from the opposition, which saw Willie Jackson evicted and Hana Rafiti Maipi Clark named, after an enormous rendition of the Haka Kamate, which led to Speaker Jerry Brownlee ordering the gallery to be emptied. Coalition partners speaking to the bill did so in tones of quiet resignation, while also completely missing the point and trying to justify other changes that they've made, which have stripped Māori voices in decision-making processes and undone work which was designed to help create equitable outcomes for Māori. They seemed somewhat confused that people are concerned that they're going to change their mind and end up voting for the bill, and couldn't work out why anyone might think that. The event itself has led to a global viral moment for Te Pāti Māori MP Maipi Clark after her symbolic tearing up of Seymour's bill and subsequent haka. News outlets from all over the world have used it, and social media sites have seen it go viral, with the vast majority of them pointing out that this was in response to a bill seen to diminish Indigenous rights. From APEC in Chile, Christopher Luxon, seen here realising a 22-year-old Wahine Māori has knocked him off his perch as the king of social media, said, "What I'm saying to you is, I hoped no one here would remind me that I allowed this to happen, but I did used to run an airline. However, the events of the day are unlikely to alter the Prime Minister's plans because the New Zealand Herald has already reported that it was a hatred-filled event, and of course that's the fault of the people who would suffer at the outcome of Seymour's bill and not the people who instigated it, who are clearly the real victims here." It was revealed on Saturday that Transport Minister Simeon Brown, seen here learning that cyclists and public transport users are also taxpayers, was made aware in Cabinet that changes to increase speed limits would lead to more deaths on the roads, and that his claims that speed increases would improve productivity were not backed up with any evidence. And he didn't attempt to provide any during the decision-making process. When asked for comment, Simeon just stood there perfectly still, hoping that the press were like Tyrannosaurus Rexes and wouldn't be able to see him if he didn't move. The government this week announced new measures to stem issues with MSD numbers. To stop the increase in unemployment numbers, they've created the perfect conditions for a brain drain, which Stats NZ this week confirmed is going incredibly well, with latest immigration numbers continuing a trend of net migration loss from New Zealand as more of us pack up and leave the country, limiting the number of people here to collect benefits. On top of that, Louise Upston, seen here realising she's had way too much coffee, the bathroom is ages away and the line is really long, has now cancelled weekly reporting on benefit numbers from MSD. Because as we all know, if you can't see a problem, it doesn't exist. ACT MP Todd Stevenson, seen here realising he missed his chance to play a hobbit in The Lord of the Rings despite his height being book accurate for the role, has called for central government funding allocations to political parties for broadcast advertising during an election campaign to be stopped, so taxpayers don't foot a bill for a party that they don't support. While the ACT Party raised over $4 million in election donations for last year's campaign, which was half of the total that the left bloc of parties in Parliament raised, Stevenson was told by mega donors like Graham Hart, David Richwhite and Sir Russell Coote, who all donated to ACT's campaign to give the 8% party disproportionate power in the coalition government, that an even playing field was unfair for voters. Te Whatu Ora Health NZ Commissioner Lester Levy, seen here giving his best Bob De Niro impersonation, this week stepped in to personally save our health sector from a lack of Milo. Under changes brought in to cut costs because of severe underfunding and not overspend as the government would like to spin it, Milo had been limited to only being allowed to be purchased for clinical reasons or under contractual arrangements. Levy personally stepped in over the decision, showing that he will get directly involved in sector decisions when it's really important. After all, this is Milo, a national institution, and far more important than things like nurses and doctors and medications and primary health service providers and midwives and care facilities and their staff and ambulance drivers and ambulances and hospital builds and blood donation collections. NZME this week announced plans to shut down 14 local news publications from all over the country. These include the Hauraki Coromandel Post, Napier Courier, the Bush Telegraph, and the 100-year-old Te Awamutu Courier, which I used to be a paperboy for. The closure has been blamed on unprofitable market forces, causing a decline in advertising and not on their apparent inability to recognise white text on a white background as impossible to read. Oddly, NZME, which owns the right-wing publications The Herald and News Talk ZB, couldn't see a link between promoting and platforming right-wing political parties and ideologies which have tanked the economy, and the issues that this causes with businesses and their inability then to spend on local advertising. And finally, Prime Minister Christopher Luxon, showing his approach to seeing the issues facing the country, appeared on the podcast Lead on Purpose, which aired on Friday morning. Luxon, who is very particular about the media he does after cutting access to news outlets, refusing to do Q&A and requesting to go on between two beers, well, he joined the podcast host James Laughlin's 8-year-old son Finn, who tripped up the Prime Minister by asking him a maths question, which Luxon got wrong initially. Good to know that the future of the country's maths curriculum is in a safe pair of hands. And that is this week's news. That was this week's news. See, it was all focusing on what happened yesterday. But yeah, it was interesting stuff to write about. I actually got really angry about the stuff with the speed limit thing after today. But like I recorded, you might notice I was wearing the same suit as I was interviewing Shanan. So I recorded that about the same time. And then this afternoon, I got a phone call from my mother letting me know that my nephew had been in a really bad car accident. He's up at Waikato Hospital at the moment, broken arm, pins expected in his legs. And to know that Simeon's sitting there going, you know what, faster speed limits are absolutely fine. It annoyed me.
We had a similar incident locally here this week where a child almost got rammed down, and it was all over our local community pages. There was Wellington Free Ambulance, the police, and etc. So yeah, maybe it's not a good idea after all.
It wasn't a good idea to begin with, and that's what the research told them. But Simeon was just like, nah, what do I know? I'll just stand here. Nobody will see me. Yeah. Anyway, we should probably give people time to go and grab themselves a drink, go to the bathroom, get ready for Emily and Magenta. I'm guessing a few people are going to jump over there, see what they've got on for tonight. Any final thoughts before we let everybody escape?
I was just going to say that don't know what we'll do in terms of leading up to the finale with the awards. My birthday's coming up, so we might do something around that. We've definitely got a show next week, though. We're going to film something with Wayne Guffey this week. And the camera is now working, so it should be okay. But in terms of the rest of it, just keep an eye out on social media because we can't make up our mind, basically. April.
I saw there's a TV show in Australia. I can't remember the name of it, but it's got a New Zealand comedian, the one who did the Jacinda impersonation. She's one of the hosts of it. And I'm sure someone in chat will tell me what it is soon. But they were advertising all week that they were going to get Jamie Oliver on. And then he got sick and couldn't make it, which we've had a few times happen now. And so their plan to make sure people didn't notice was just to put out ads for guests that were never going to make it, like Mu Ding, the little baby hippo, or the Pope. So it's just basically setting the expectation that guests are just going to be there. You have to show up to see who they are.
Yeah, we don't know. But we'll keep you posted on social media what we do over the coming weeks in between stuff.
Yep, absolutely. One final thing before we do go, though. The results of our poll, we've got 32 votes and 56% of people have either joined the Hikoi or are planning on joining the Hikoi. 28% have said that they're not joining it. And 16% have said that they are not sure yet. So entirely up to them. Melanie Bracewell, that's the one. Mel Bracewell, yeah. And I think didn't Neighbours get cancelled? I'm sure Neighbours was cancelled and then brought back, and then I don't know.
No, Neighbours is on Amazon Prime.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
It got brought by Bezos.
Oh, okay.
And now now because they're in the American market, they're eligible for Emmys and Grammys and all that kind of thing.
I can't imagine Neighbours winning an Emmy.
But then, because they got brought by Americans and they're eligible for Emmys and Oscars and Grammys and Tonys and whatever else.
I'd love to see a musical episode of Neighbours go out to try and win a Tony. That'd be brilliant.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's us done for the night.
Look out on the social media, see what we've got coming up in the next week or two. And
absolutely. And feel free to go and comment on videos and share and like and subscribe and all the rest of that sort of stuff.
And vote
Have a
on
fantastic weekend.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. All right. Now I got to press the button.